President Biden finding himself in a free fall after another bruising week. His administration racking up losses after a judge pulled his transportation mask mandate, and Democrats revolted over his plan to end Title 42, which could lead to an even bigger surge at the border. Two major election forecasters now predicting a red wave and are shifting their projected outcomes for several House races towards the GOP. CNN soaking it all up with this headline: "It's been a very bad few days for Joe Biden." And the president's job performance not inspiring confidence.
There's a poll that was done about a month ago in which the Democrats are in Congress are stunningly underwater. There's simply not a belief among the American people that the Democrats are well equipped to handle pretty much any problem at the moment.
And while Biden has been telling allies he is game for a 2024 run, others are not so certain. Some in the media now saying the bench to replace him is not looking promising. And Kamala Harris, once again, the topic of ridicule after delivering this speech about space.
I think everyone here recognizes how extraordinary space is. Whether it is satellites that orbit the Earth, humans that land on the moon, or telescopes that peer into the furthest reaches of the universe. Space is exciting.
Waiting in the wings, Bernie Sanders, a socialist senator, not ruling out another run for the White House if President Biden decides not to run for re-election. Greg.
Yes.
We're not child actors behind the vice president?
Yeah, she's into space.
That's space.
She loves space. Maybe it's because she's got a load of it between her ears. Is that mean? No, that's mean. That's mean. She's a smart lady, but she talks like we asked her where babies came from. Like, I'm ready for to say there's a stork that dropped you off on mommy's porch. I get memories of Romper Room when she's talking. It's so remember Romper Room with was that just California? You know what? I'm going to move on. I'm looking at this. Okay, so you see Hillary was supposed to come back. You got Bernie. You got this is the Democratic bench is thinner than Chris Wallace's demo reel from CNN Plus.
It's very thin.
Thanks. I just needed to get that in there. But now I'm going to be a pessimist. The country's in pretty bad shape with inflation, with crime. Mental health, I think, is one of the biggest issues of our time. And in every one of those, the Dems have kind of made it worse. Even knowing the outcome, if you look at, like, as crime raged, they still defunded and demoralized the police. As inflation rose, they just printed more money, $500 billion of it disappearing, $500 billion. That's got to be one inflation point, right? And then you look in the city streets and you look on social media. We have an epidemic of mental illness going on, and you can't put people into therapy or into treatment because that's a violation of their rights. So I guess what I'm getting at is even if one Democrat wins, that's insane. Because this is probably the greatest opportunity for the Republicans to actually clear the table, if that's the right phrase, because those metrics I mentioned are so important. The only thing that will stop it is if the media decides to take those metrics off the table, right? Like they did with Hunter's laptop, or create a new hoax, which I've been trying to figure out what that next hoax is going to be, because there's going to be a big one. I don't know what it is. I mean, the Russian collusion, fine people hoax, what is it going to be that's going to demonize all Republicans?
Maybe it'll have something to do with space.
Or it could be
out of this world.
Yes, it could be a satanic secret cult.
Harold, I noticed that the whole thing about Bernie Sanders saying he's going to run again. I was listening to a podcast earlier, and they said this memo about Bernie Sanders leaked. No, it didn't. It was purposefully given to the media so that this story would get out there and so that Bernie Sanders can continue to raise money. Do you think Bernie Sanders, at 80 years old, believes he's going to run for president in 2024?
I read first of all, it's good to be back around the table. I read an excerpt from, I wish I'd been here for the phone yesterday, too.
Thanks a lot, Harold.
I read an excerpt saying that Bernie Sanders met with President Obama, and President Obama said that you're like an old prophet, Old Testament prophet. Old Testament prophets don't get to be kings in the New Testament, and you should accept that you've had a big impact on the party. You can't tell anyone what to do, and Bernie Sanders certainly has a strong set of opinions. I think he is a serious guy, but I sometimes think his ideas are not serious. And if he were to run, if Joe Biden didn't run, I think you'll have a
Do you think Biden will run again?
I think he said if Biden didn't run.
But do you think Biden will run again?
I think Biden will run again, and I look forward to supporting him. I think two things. I do.
Really?
I do.
You think he's going to run again?
I do think he's going to run again. And if he doesn't run again, the Democrats will have a free-for-all. I think a couple
That's when
things
you
real quick.
enter the picture, Harold.
I think a couple things. I saw in the poll, Title 42, Democrats, hear me out very briefly, do not suspend Title 42 unless we have a real plan to deal with the border. We should develop a plan that deals with investing in that part of the hemisphere, as many of us are saying, and we should find ways to protect our border. This is not it's a humanitarian crisis, but it's a national security issue first and foremost. Crime. We're kidding ourselves as a party if we don't believe that people all across this country are concerned about guns, concerned about bail reform, concerned about something that Greg mentions on this show very often, concerns that we have here in New York around mental health. And as the judge has said many times before, we ought to prosecute the crimes that are on the books. And if we have to swell our jails, we should swell them. 3, I'd say something to the Republicans. You're not going to win just jumping on Democrats all the time. If you don't have big ideas, and I would say to Democrats as well, big ideas around how we invest in cities to create new jobs, to get people off their behinds and get to work, to want to innovate, we're not going to be the country we should be. And the party that does that best, Greg, I think is the party that's going to win the majority, either retain it or win it. But Democrats, be clear about one thing, crime and the border. If we don't deal with those issues, we start at a massive disadvantage in the fall.
That doesn't even include the inflation issues as
And
well.
welcome, Joy.
Joey, okay, let's go to you next. But I want to play for you this soundbite today because he mentions Title 42. We haven't mentioned the mask mandates except for the intro. Here's President Biden kind of confusing the two today.
On Title 42, sir, are you considering delaying lifting Title 42?
No, what I'm considering is continuing to hear from well, first of all, there's going to be an appeal by the Justice Department. Because as a matter of principle, we want to be able to be in a position where if in fact it is strongly concluded by the scientists that we need Title 42, that we be able to do that.
Oh.
Joey?
Yeah, man, Bernie Sanders is looking pretty good right there, isn't he? I mean, as far as a candidate goes, the Democrats should recruit Tyler Perry is who they should recruit. You couldn't beat him. That's a rags to riches story. That's your deep bench for the Democrats there. Instead, we have this geriatric guy who can't consider the two things that he's pushing on Americans right now. Title 42 should be repealed if you believe that the pandemic is over, if you believe that the risk to our country isn't there at the border. It's unethical to use that for a purpose other than what it's intended for, and it's up to Republicans and Democrats to fix our immigration system. I don't think that we put Band-Aids on tourniquet problems as a guy who's needed a tourniquet or two. I'm not a big fan of that tactic. Will Republicans win big? Yeah, they'll win big. Does that mean they'll win 2024? I remember the Tea Party swing. I remember a lot of swings over the past 10 to 14 years that didn't bear fruit, because at the end of the day, once you have the gavel, you're in charge and you also have responsibility.
That's right. All right, Judge, winding you up and setting you loose at the table.
You know, the truth here is that to those people who believe that Joe Biden's winning had more to do with disliking Donald Trump, I would say this. I think America dislikes Joe Biden. And I think America dislikes Joe Biden because they're fed up of what he's done to them. And it's exacerbated by the pandemic. I mean, everything that he's done has been struck down, whether it's a mask mandate, whether it was a vaccine mandate, whether it was the eviction moratorium, whether it was blocking companies from vaccinating their employees. Everything the guy tries to do is being knocked down in the courts. And he's dragged down the whole party. The crime rate is beyond what any of us have seen in 30 years. So I think that certainly the Republicans have to have a plan, and they will have a plan. They're for law and order. They're for a border security. They're for making sure that we are independent, that we do things and make things in America, and that we don't support our enemies when it comes to making products for America. And in the end, I think it's as simple as saying, you know, this guy has been a disaster. Everything that's happened to us since he's been the president is a mess. and our lives are just terrible. You talk to anyone, they're very unhappy. And, you know, I don't have to wind up and swing it out. It really is a sad commentary on where we are in this country. He cannot lead that party anymore. And the fact that they don't get rid of him is stunning to me. And you know what? Bernie Sanders may be 80 years old, but, you know, they stole it from him with that whole thing with Hillary and Donna Brazile and all that other stuff. You know, maybe it is his turn. I'm not saying that I support him, but at least he's smart. He's got the energy. He knows what he's doing.
Well, no, I was just going to ask Joey about his tie because it's disturbing to me.
It's the closest thing to spring in my closet. And I'm bringing the warm weather up here with me.
All right, we appreciate that.
It's giving me flashbacks.
Up next, a Black Lives Matter leader lashing out at a Democratic mayor after being accused of ignoring inner-city crime.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.